Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. To be very honest with you all, I am extremely worried about the state of sexual and reproductive health in the US and around the world and the direction that we're headed in. And I feel very overwhelmed. I don't know where to help or how to begin. So when I'm feeling that way, I listen to this podcast called Repros Fight Back. They talk about abortion, birth control access, sex ed, Black maternal health, LGBTQIA plus rights, and so much more. The host, Jenny, is super real and feels like your friend. She has cats, she bakes, she reads romance novels, and she asks the right questions you've always wanted to ask to leaders and advocates in reproductive rights, and then gives you things you can do to fight back. And you literally walk away feeling empowered and inspired. Their topics are vast, like how sexual and reproductive health and rights are provided in emergency settings, how Project 2025 is already in action, and how the administration and the Supreme Court are influencing our health and rights. So, if you want to totally feel inspired, empowered, and in the know, go listen and subscribe to Repros Fight Back. You can find it on any podcast app. Hi, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope everyone's doing well. And yes, I will be your Valentine. Thank you so much for asking. I hope you're my Valentine. Today, we have an incredible bonus episode all about dating and physical disability, featuring answers from Steve Way and Danny Kurtzman. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out our full Rom-Com Vom episode that just came out this week on Good Bad Things. It's a groundbreaking new rom-com featuring authentic disability representation, starring and co-written by Danny Kurtzman with executive production from Steve Way. And in that episode, we talked about how the rom-com genre has mostly failed disabled characters, either sidelining them or using them for inspiration porn or straight up forgetting that they exist in love stories completely. But Good Bad Things really flips that script on its head, gives us something we rarely see, which is a disabled protagonist who is sexy, messy, funny, actually gets the romance. So today we're diving deeper into a topic the film touches, which is dating and physical disability. Because let's be real, dating is already awkward and full of weird rules. And when you add accessibility and ableism and people's assumptions into the mix, it gets way more complicated, and we need to talk about it. And I asked Steve and Danny about their own experiences dating with a physical disability and navigating that. And they had a lot to say. So let's get into it. The first kind of category here is like the realities of dating with a disability, with a physical disability in particular. And, dating is already full of stress, bad dates, ghosting, weird profile pictures where people are holding a fish for some reason. But when you have a physical disability, there are so many extra layers non-disabled people don't even think about. And here's a quote from Danny and Steve about this. Dating with a disability is very interesting. On top of the typical anxieties that come with it, you have to factor in the disabled aspects that non-disabled people usually take for granted. We have to figure out how to get there, if the location is accessible, if we can eat something or not, etc. So it's not just about who you're going out with. It's about whether you can even physically get to the date without running into a million obstacles, which, when you think about it, is something that rom-coms never, ever talk about. So there you have it. Next, let's go into the misconceptions that able-bodied people have about people with physical disabilities. People seriously underestimate disabled daters, and non-disabled folks sometimes assume that disabled people can't do much, let alone date or have sex or be in a relationship. And it's not necessarily coming from a bad place, but it is coming from a place of ignorance. And here is what Steve and Danny have to say about that. Here's what they point out. A lot of non-disabled people assume we can't do anything. They underestimate our abilities and are often surprised to learn that we're capable of a lot. But it's nothing out of malice or prejudice. So often, non-disabled people are victims of falling into the trap of the old and harmful disabled Hollywood tropes that we're getting rid of. And that is exactly why Good Bad Things matters, because those old Hollywood tropes, which are the ones that make disabled people feel either helpless or inspirational heroes, but they're never just regular people, those need to be cut. Those need to go bye-bye. I also asked Danny and Steve what like makes a solid first date for disabled folks, for physically disabled folks. And, like if you're planning a date and you want it to be fun and stress-free and accessible, what are the go-to options? And according to Danny and Steve, it really depends on the person, but some solid low stress choices that they shared are going to the movies, grabbing a milkshake, and even hopping on Zoom for a virtual date, because sometimes dates are not about doing the most, they are about comfort and ease. And when you're navigating accessibility on top of normal dating nerves, that really matters a lot. The next question I had is, when you tell a potential date that you have a physical disability, so like when to bring it up on a dating app, like do you put it on your profile right away? Do you wait until you started talking? Do you see how the vibe goes? And here's what Steve and Danny had to say about that. There are a lot of similarities between disabled and non disabled people with wanting to gain trust. But when you have a disability, you want to make sure that they're open to learning about our disability. There's nothing wrong with not being up for it, but it's important to us to know early on in order to protect ourselves. And yeah, this is huge. I just feel like it's not just about like, when do I tell them? It sounds like it's more about figuring out if this person is even worth your time, because not everyone's going to be open to dating someone with a disability. And while that really sucks, it's much better to know that up front than to deal with someone who is pretending to be okay with it. So, yeah, not only to do with when you tell someone, but how you tell them, if you're able to build that trust. Moving on to sex assumptions and the unfortunate, infamous question, does your dick work? Which is super fucked up. So, I want to talk about sex for a second. I'd be a bad sex educator if I didn't. And one of the most frustrating things that disabled people deal with is ignorant, dumbass questions and assumptions about their sex lives. And the most common one, Steve and Danny said, is like, does your dick work? Yes, people really ask that. Like, imagine being on a date, you're sipping your little cocktail, you're enjoying the conversation, and then wham, someone just says that like it's completely normal. And Steve and Danny says that conversations about sex can go one of two ways. They're either healthy and constructive or respectful, or they're kind of ignorant and full of false assumptions. And honestly, this isn't just a disability thing. This is a basic human decency thing. Like, if you are someone who has been wondering something like that, if you look at a physically disabled person, I think you need to ask yourself, would I be comfortable if someone asked me a deeply personal, invasive question 5 minutes into a conversation? And if the answer is no, then maybe you don't ask it. So, yeah, I think like important to focus on the healthy, constructive, respectful conversations around sex and to celebrate those and to uplift those. Some final thoughts here. What can we learn from good, bad things? Um, Truly, like, I watched this film. This film is a game changer. It's not just a good rom-com with good writing, good cinematography, good music, good acting, but it's a rom-com that finally gives disabled people love stories and the authenticity that they deserve. And Steve and Danny both made it clear that we need more stories, more representation, more disabled filmmakers in Hollywood to actually move the genre forward. And that starts with us, folks who are listening, and me, right? Supporting these films, demanding better representation, and really questioning the old tropes that we grew up with. And if you haven't seen this film yet, go support it, share it with your friends, talk about it. Let Hollywood know that we want more rom-coms that actually reflect real love stories. And if you have ever had an experience dating someone with a physical disability, or a moment where you have realized that Hollywood has shaped your perception of disabled romance or interabled romance, hit us up. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on Spotify. We want to hear your thoughts. And yeah, if you haven't already, again, stop this episode or wait till, 30 seconds from now where it's going to be finished and go check out the Rom-Com Bomb episode about good, bad things with Steve and Danny. And keep your eyes out next week for next week's rom-com. We're diving into a rom-com that almost got scrapped after test audiences called it too mean until one tiny change saved it all. If you have a guess, check us out on our IG broadcast channel to engage in conversation about behind the scenes with Rom-Com Bomb and all of our other stuff we got going on there. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Have such a wonderful Valentine's Day. Love y'all. Our creator, host, and executive producer is me, Danielle Bezalel, aka DB. Our producer is Sadie Luigi. Our communications lead is Catherine Cohen. Our marketing coordinator is Alex Bateman. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds. Thanks so much to our featured guests, partners, and listeners. If you have a rom-com you remember from growing up and want us to cover it on Rom-Com Bomb, submit it to us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and leaving a comment on Spotify. Want to partner with us? Email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. For more sex ed content, follow us on Instagram @sexedwithdbpodcast. See you next time.